Are you truly kind, or are you just afraid of being seen as evil? From childhood, we're taught to be kind, gentle, and patient. We habitually accept kindness as an absolute virtue without ever questioning whether it might harbor unspeakable harm. Friedrich Nietzsche, the renowned philosopher, challenged this very notion of kindness, suggesting that beneath our proclaimed virtue might lurk deep-seated fears and weaknesses. Is kindness truly without cost? Nietzsche warned that kindness might not always be virtuous. Instead, it could sometimes be a disguised form of self-neglect or avoidance. Why do those who continually give and treat others with compassion often end up suffering the most? Have you ever considered that your commitment to kindness might actually be a suppression of your true self, a denial of your authentic desires and emotions? Shouldn't genuine kindness bring happiness? Why, then, does it lead to exhaustion and confusion? Story 1. Jason is a mid-level manager known throughout his company for his exceptional kindness. Whenever colleagues face difficulties, he's always the first to help, often sacrificing his personal time. Once, after helping colleagues finish an urgent project, he worked overtime for several days straight until he collapsed from exhaustion and ended up hospitalized. While recovering, he painfully realized that none of those he'd helped bothered to visit or even send a message of concern. Lying in his hospital bed, Jason felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness and disappointment. For the first time, he questioned Nietzsche's assertion. Could his kindness be a form of self-destruction? Story 2. Emily is a young teacher known for her endless patience, especially with her most rebellious students. She always listens patiently, hoping to influence them with gentleness and compassion. Over time, however, Emily noticed these students didn't improve. Instead, their behavior worsened. They grew disrespectful, interpreting her kindness as weakness. Emily's passion and enthusiasm gradually drained away, leaving her questioning Nietzsche's provocative idea, "Is my kindness merely empowering others to hurt me?" Nietzsche challenges us to reconsider kindness as something potentially harmful when it becomes excessive or unbalanced. We habitually regard kindness as a virtue without considering it might become a burden and a tool for self-harm. When you're unconditionally kind, are you unconsciously neglecting yourself? You've given so much. Have others genuinely recognized your efforts, or have they simply taken your kindness for granted, believing it to be your obligation? Nietzsche once asserted, "Excessive kindness isn't a genuine virtue, but a destruction of one's own will." Do you truly understand the price of kindness? Are you ready to confront the hidden truths behind kindness? What if being a good person is a trap? What if the very qualities we're raised to admire, being agreeable, obedient, selfless, always putting others first, aren't virtues at all, but symptoms of a profound sickness? A sickness that's leading us, quietly and willingly, down a path to collective self-destruction. Over a century ago, one philosopher saw this coming. He looked at the moral world of his time and didn't see progress. He saw a dangerous decay disguised as kindness. He called it the morality of the herd, and he warned with terrifying clarity that it would be the downfall of not just individuals, but of society itself. That philosopher was Friedrich Nietzsche. His name is often whispered with a mix of fear and fascination, tied to radical, dangerous ideas. But what if his most dangerous idea is also the most liberating? Today we're going to unpack Nietzsche's shocking prophecy. We'll connect his critique of goodness to the modern epidemic of the people-pleaser, and reveal why the most obedient, the most agreeable, and the most good among us may be heading for a collective dead end. This isn't a story about abstract philosophy. This is a story about you. It's about the invisible chains of goodness and the quiet war being waged for your will. Before we dive into Nietzsche's world, let's start with our own. We have to diagnose the illness to understand the cure. We live in an age that champions niceness. We're told from childhood to share, be considerate, and not make waves. The good boy or good girl is the one who complies, who doesn't argue, who puts their own desires aside for the sake of harmony. As we get older, this solidifies into what modern psychology calls the pleaser personality. What does this person look like? You might recognize them instantly, maybe in a friend, a co-worker, or even in the mirror. They're the ones who always say yes, even when their schedule is overflowing, even when they're exhausted. They're the ones who apologize for things that aren't their fault. They master the art of swallowing their own opinions to avoid a fight, becoming social chameleons who blend into any environment. On the surface, this seems virtuous. People see them as reliable, kind, and generous. But beneath this calm exterior, a quiet corrosion is happening. The people pleaser lives in a state of chronic, low-grade anxiety. Their sense of self-worth isn't generated from within, it's outsourced, dependent on a constant stream of approval from others. Their identity becomes a fragile mosaic, pieced together from the expectations of everyone around them. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you swallowed your true opinion to keep the peace? How many times have you agreed to something only to be filled with a silent, simmering resentment? How often do you feel a gnawing guilt for daring to put your own needs first? This is the daily reality of the pleaser. It's a life lived on an emotional credit line, as one psychologist put it, where you're constantly borrowing your sense of stability from others, leaving you vulnerable to manipulation and burnout. The cost is immense. This constant self-suppression leads to a profound disconnection from yourself. Your own desires, values, and ambitions become faint whispers, drowned out by the roaring demands of the world. You start to lose the ability to even know what you truly want. Your life is no longer a path you forge, but a series of reactions to what other people want. This isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. It's a slow, meshing suicide of the soul. Over time, the pleaser feels overwhelmed and disconnected, trapped by a deep-rooted fear of disappointing others. This isn't just an individual problem. It's an epidemic. We've built entire social structures, online and offline, that reward this behavior. We like agreeableness. We cancel dissent. We praise conformity and label strong, self-directed wills as selfish, arrogant, or problematic. We've cultivated a world where it's easier to be a shadow than a person. A world where the good people are often the most empty, and this is precisely the world Nietzsche saw coming. He saw this goodness for what it was, not a strength, but a weakness disguised as virtue. A comfortable prison built to contain the human spirit, and he knew where it would lead. Section 2. The philosopher who saw it coming. To understand the prophecy, you have to understand the prophet. Friedrich Nietzsche, born in 1844, was a man who lived a life of physical pain and intellectual solitude. A brilliant philologist, he abandoned the safety of academia to become a philosophical wanderer, armed with just a pen and an unyielding will to question everything. He is perhaps one of history's most misunderstood thinkers. His work was notoriously twisted and used by the Nazis after his death. A cruel irony given his own scathing critiques of German nationalism and anti-Semitism. His writings aren't systematic arguments, but explosive collections of aphorisms and parables designed to provoke, not to soothe. Nietzsche called himself dynamite. He saw his job not as building a new system, but as demolishing the old one. He wanted to take a hammer to the idols of his time, the unquestioned beliefs in God, objective truth, and most importantly, morality itself. In his book On the Genealogy of Morality, he laid it out plain. We need a critique of moral values. The value of these values should itself, for once, be examined. This was a radical act. Most philosophers before him argued about which moral system was right. Nietzsche asked a more terrifying question. What if the very foundation of our good and evil is a lie? A lie we tell ourselves to make our weakness feel noble? He looked at the 19th century, an era of supposed progress, and saw the opposite. He saw the rise of what he called the last man, the creature who wants only comfort, safety, and mindless entertainment. The last man avoids risk, suffering, and greatness. We have invented happiness, say the last men, and they blink. For Nietzsche, this creature was the inevitable product of a morality that prized comfort over challenge. He saw that the decline of religion wouldn't lead to some rational utopia, but to a desperate void of meaning, a state he famously called nihilism. He predicted that people wouldn't abandon their religious impulses, they'd just transfer them to new idols. Political ideologies, social movements, and the blind worship of the collective. Nietzsche was a physician of culture. His diagnosis was stark. Western civilization was sick. It was infected with a morality that celebrated everything that was life-denying, that weakened the individual and paved the way for a future of comfortable, meaningless mediocrity. He saw that our idea of the good person wasn't leading us to a higher state, but was instead leveling us down, producing a smaller, almost ridiculous type, a herd animal, something eager to please, sickly, and mediocrity. This was his prophecy, and at its heart was a concept he called herd morality. So, what is this herd morality that Nietzsche found so dangerous? To get it, we have to travel back with him in his genealogy of morality to a time before our ideas of good and evil even existed. Nietzsche argues that there are basically two types of morality that have ever existed: master morality and slave morality. Noble morality, he says, belongs to the ancient aristocrats, the noble warriors, the strong and powerful souls. In this system, good just happens. The noble person looks at themselves, their strength, pride, courage, creativity, and says, "This is good." Good is a celebration of a life-affirming existence. Bad is just an afterthought. It refers to the common, the weak, the cowardly, those who are unlike the masters. It's a description, not a moral judgment. But then, something extraordinary happens. A revolution in values. The weak, the oppressed, the enslaved, what Nietzsche calls the herd, start to cook up their own morality. They can't create it from strength, they have to create it from weakness, envy, and hatred. Nietzsche gives this feeling a special name: resentment. It's a bitter, resentful poison that brews in the soul of the powerless against the powerful. Because the herd can't win through direct action, they win through spiritual revenge. They perform a miraculous flip of values. They look at the qualities of the master, strength, pride, self-love, and declare them evil. And everything that defines them, their own weakness, humility, suffering, obedience, they sanctify and call good. Meekness becomes a virtue. Pity becomes the highest good. Suffering is no longer something to overcome, but something that makes you holy. The good man of herd morality is born. Nietzsche writes, "The slave revolt in morals begins when resentment itself becomes creative and gives birth to values. This new morality isn't a yes to life. It's a no to everything different from it, everything strong and independent. Its genius is its ability to convince even the masters that their own strength is a sin. It convinces the powerful eagle that it's evil for being a bird of prey, and that the gentle lamb is the model of virtue. This, Nietzsche argues, is the morality that has dominated the Western world for 2 millennia. It started with Christianity, and many would argue its logic continues in secular ideas like democracy and socialism, which Nietzsche saw as its direct heirs. These systems, he claimed, all spring from the same herd instinct, the desire to protect the weak, level all distinctions, and eliminate suffering. They create a value system that favors the group over the individual, safety over risk, and comfort over greatness. Herd morality is like a warm, comfortable cocoon. It offers protection, belonging, and clear rules. It removes the terrifying burden of creating your own values. All you have to do is obey. The problem, as Nietzsche saw it, is that a cocoon isn't a permanent home. It's something you have to break out of to grow. But herd morality wants to make the cocoon eternal. It becomes the herd instinct within the single individual, an inner voice that crushes any drive toward individuality and excellence. In our modern world, that voice is louder than ever. Social media, Nietzsche might argue, has become the ultimate amplifier for the herd, a place where conformity is rewarded with likes and dissent is punished with shaming. The morality of the crowd demands public displays of virtue, turning goodness into a performance. To be good is to conform to the ever-shifting standards of the collective. To dare to stand apart is to risk being cast out. And for most people, the fear of being alienated by the herd is overwhelming. This is the tyranny of the herd, and its primary target is the very engine of human greatness, the will to power. The phrase will to power is probably the most famous and dangerously misunderstood of all Nietzsche's ideas. It brings up images of tyrants and brutal domination, but to see it that way is to miss its profound psychological depth. The will to power for Nietzsche is not the will to dominate other people. It is the fundamental driving force within all of life itself. It's an insatiable desire to manifest power, a deep internal impulse to grow, expand, overcome obstacles, and become more than you are. Life doesn't just want to survive, it wants to discharge its strength. It wants to overcome itself, again and again, as he wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And life confided the secret to me. Behold, it said, I am that which must always overcome itself. Think of a seed pushing through concrete, an artist struggling to bring a vision to life, an athlete pushing their body past its known limits. This is the will to power in action. It's the drive for self-mastery and self-transformation. It's the force that turns chaos into form, suffering into strength, and potential into reality. Nietzsche's formula for greatness is amor fati, the love of one's fate. It means wanting nothing to be different, embracing every challenge as an opportunity for growth. This is why Nietzsche celebrated struggle, not because he was a masochist, but because he saw it as necessary resistance. A muscle only grows when it pushes against resistance. A human spirit only grows when it overcomes hardship. To eliminate all suffering, as herd morality wants to do, is to eliminate the very conditions for greatness. Herd morality is a system designed to tame this will. It fears the raw, creative, and disruptive energy of the will to power. It tries to neuter it. It teaches you to turn your will against yourself, not for self-mastery, but for self-denial. It tells you your desires are selfish, your ambitions are arrogant, and your drive to rise above the crowd is a sin. It replaces the noble goal of self-overcoming with the herd-approved goal of self-sacrifice. This brings us right back to the people-pleaser. If we look through a Nietzschean lens, the chronic people-pleaser is a perfect example of a will to power turned inward in a destructive way. Their energy isn't spent creating their own life, but managing the emotions of others. Their drive for mastery isn't aimed at their own potential, but at perfecting the art of being agreeable. They are constantly discharging their strength, but they're pouring it into a black hole of external validation. Nietzsche asks us to look beneath our actions and ask, what is the will that drives this? Is it a will born of strength or a will born of fear? This leads him to one of his most devastating critiques, the re-evaluation of kindness itself. And here we arrive at the terrible, brilliant reversal at the heart of this prophecy. You think you're being kind, but you might just be self-destructing. You believe you're being good, but you might just be afraid. Nietzsche forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Is your kindness a gift that flows from an abundance of strength? Or is it a mask for fear? Is it a genuine act of compassion, or a strategic move designed to buy safety and approval? He saw two types of compassion. There's a higher compassion, which comes from a position of strength. It's the compassion of someone who has so much vitality that they can afford to help others without diminishing themselves. It's a gift, not a sacrifice. Then there's the lower compassion, the compassion of the herd. This is the pity that herd morality calls the supreme virtue. But Nietzsche saw this pity as toxic. It's rooted in weakness and self-denial. It's the compassion of someone who can't stand to see suffering because it reminds them of their own fragility. It keeps the weak in their state of weakness, rather than challenging them to overcome it. The goodness of the people-pleaser is almost always this second kind of compassion. It's not a choice made freely from a place of inner security. It's a compulsion driven by anxiety. It's fear-based compliance. You say yes, not because you want to, but because you are terrified of the consequences of saying no. You fear conflict. You fear rejection. You fear being seen as a bad person. Your kindness isn't a testament to your virtue. It's a symptom of your lack of boundaries. Simbad, you have a podcast where this is a profound form of self-abandonment. Each time you swallow your own needs to please others, you send a message to yourself. My needs don't matter. My feelings are secondary. I am less important. This isn't an act of love. It's an act of quiet violence against your own soul. The irony, Nietzsche would point out, is that this is even true altruism. It's deeply selfish, but the selfishness is aimed at securing your own comfort and avoiding your own fear. It is the ultimate expression of a will to power poisoned by resentment. A resentment against the self for not being strong enough to stand on its own. So we have to ask the questions Nietzsche demands. Are you kind, or are you just harmless? There is a world of difference. A truly strong person is capable of great destruction, but chooses creation. They can say no, but choose to say yes when it aligns with their values. The person who is merely harmless has no choice. They can't say no because they lack the strength. Their goodness isn't a moral victory. It's a declaration of powerlessness. When a whole society adopts this fearful goodness as its highest value, the consequences are catastrophic. This leads us to the final stage of Nietzsche's prophecy, the collective dead end. What happens when a society successfully sands down all the sharp edges, all the nonconformists, all the strong and independent wills? What's the ultimate fate of a world built entirely on herd morality? The result, Nietzsche prophesied, isn't a utopia. It's a world of profound and suffocating mediocrity. It's the triumph of the last man. A society that values safety above all else will breed people unable to take risks. A society that demonizes suffering will produce individuals who lack the resilience to grow from hardship. A society that prizes agreeableness over truth will lose its ability to have the difficult, honest conversations needed for real progress. When the herd's values become the only values, human greatness becomes impossible. The exceptional individual, the artist, the thinker, the innovator, who dares to forge a new path is seen as a threat. The herd, driven by its fear of the unknown and its envy of the exceptional, will try to pull them down, to level them, to make them just like everyone else. Creativity is suppressed for conformity. Courage is replaced by caution. Ambition is shamed as arrogance. The collective fate of the good but mediocre is stagnation. Such a society loses its vitality, its dynamism, its will to create and overcome great challenges. It becomes a society of comfortable, pleasant, and ultimately meaningless existence. Existence warn't be deprived of its great character, Nietzsche warned. In this world, there are no high peaks and no deep valleys, only a flat, endless plain of comfortable contentment. We can see echoes of this in our own time, in corporate worlds where disruptive ideas are often suffocated by groupthink, in political discourse where tribalism and moral outrage often replace nuanced debate, in the culture of safetyism, where the desire to protect everyone from any potential offense can lead to the suppression of free expression and intellectual rigor. We have become a society that is often more concerned with feeling good than with being great. This is the end of good people that Nietzsche foresaw, not a literal apocalypse, but a spiritual one. A society doesn't end when its buildings crumble, but when its people lose the will to build anything new. The end is when the highest aspiration becomes not to achieve greatness, but simply to avoid giving offense. It's a slow, quiet death of the human spirit, a descent into a collective dead end where everyone is good and no one is great. But Nietzsche didn't just leave us in this abyss. He wasn't merely a prophet of doom, he was also a guide. He diagnosed the sickness so he could point towards a path of recovery, a path of incredible difficulty and immense promise, the path of the higher man. Faced with the bleak prospect of the last man and the tyranny of the herd, Nietzsche offers a breathtaking alternative. He offers an ideal to strive for, the Übermensch, often translated as Overman or Superman. It has nothing to do with comic books. The Übermensch is a psychological and spiritual ideal. It represents the human being who has successfully overcome the human, all too human, the one who has broken free from the shackles of herd morality. The path to becoming a higher man isn't about getting power over others, but about getting power over yourself. It's the path of self-overcoming. This is the ultimate, positive expression of the will to power. It's the conscious act of harnessing all of your drives and passions and disciplining them in the service of a self-chosen goal. The higher man is not born. He is created, and he is his own creator. What does this creator do? First, he undertakes a re-valuation of all values. He looks at the moral rulebook handed to him by society, the one that says meek is good, pride is evil, suffering is bad, and he smashes it. He understands there are no universal moral truths sent from a god or discovered by reason. Values are human creations, and if they were created once, they can be created again. The higher man has the courage to stand alone, without the comfort of external rules, and create his own table of values, values that are life-affirming, that serve his own growth and flourishing. Second, the higher man gives style to his character. He sees his life as a work of art. He takes the chaos of his passions and the conflicting drives within him and forges them into a coherent, beautiful whole. This requires immense self-discipline and honesty. It means facing the darkest parts of yourself, the envy, the anger, the fear, not to suppress them like the herd, but to understand them and integrate them into a stronger personality. Third, and most importantly, the higher man says yes to life. He embraces amor fati, the love of fate. He doesn't wish for an easier life. He affirms his existence in its totality, with all its pain, struggle, and joy. He understands that suffering isn't a mistake to be fixed, but an indispensable part of the journey to greatness. As Nietzsche famously wrote, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." The higher man finds that meaning not by looking to heaven, but by creating it here on earth, through his own will. This is not an easy path. It's a path of solitude, of being misunderstood, of constant struggle. The herd will call you evil, selfish, and mad. You must become a wanderer, leaving the comfortable city of conformity to climb your own mountain. But for Nietzsche, this is the only path worth taking. It's the only way to escape the slow death of the last man and realize our highest potential. Nietzsche's philosophy can feel abstract, like a storm on a distant mountain peak. So how do we bring it down into our own lives? How do you even begin the process of self-overcoming in a world that pushes for conformity? This isn't about becoming a heartless monster, but about becoming a more authentic, powerful, and self-directed person. Here are 4 practical steps to begin your own revaluation of values. First, identify your shoulds. Get a piece of paper and write down the moral rules you live by automatically. I should always be available. I should avoid conflict. I should put others first. I should feel guilty when I say no. Now, for each should, ask yourself Nietzsche's piercing question. Where did this come from? Did I choose it, or was it given to me? Does it serve my growth and strength, or does it serve the comfort of the herd? This act of questioning is the first hammer blow against the prison of inherited morality. You begin to see the bars. Second, embrace discomfort. The people-pleaser's world is built on avoiding discomfort. The discomfort of disappointing someone, of a difficult conversation, of being disliked. Your task is to start moving towards that discomfort in small, manageable ways. Start small. The next time someone asks for a favor you don't have time for, just say no. Not with a long apologetic explanation, just a polite, "I'm sorry, I can't do that right now." Feel the anxiety that comes up. Sit with it. Don't run from it. Recognize that feeling is the sensation of your will to power, flexing its atrophied muscles. Each time you tolerate this discomfort, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Third, find your why. The higher man is defined by a great unifying life project. Most of us just chase the goals the herd sets for us. The promotion, the bigger house, the social status. You have to find your own why. This requires deep introspection. As Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." What is the one thing that sets your soul on fire? What activity makes you feel challenged, engaged, and alive? Is it creating art, building a business, raising a family with conscious values, mastering a skill? Find that why. It will become your North Star, the internal compass that replaces the external map of the herd. Fourth, create. Don't just conform. The will to power is a creative force. It has to have an outlet, or it turns destructive. Herd morality encourages you to consume and conform. The path of self-overcoming demands that you create. Channel your energy into a project that is authentically your own. Write the first page of that book. Learn that instrument. Start that workout plan. It doesn't matter how small the act is. What matters is that it is an expression of your will, not a reaction to someone else's. In the act of creating, you aren't just making something new in the world. You are making yourself. You are transforming from a passive piece in someone else's game into the artist of your own life. These steps aren't a checklist. They're a lifelong practice. The practice of becoming who you are. We began with a simple, unsettling question. What if being a good person is a trap? We've seen how the modern people-pleaser is a symptom of a cultural sickness that Nietzsche diagnosed over a century ago, a sickness born from the slave revolt of morality and the triumph of the herd. We've seen how this herd morality, born of weakness and fear, works to suppress the most vital force within us, the will to power. It teaches us to be kind when we're really just being compliant, to be selfless when we're really just erasing ourselves. We've stared into Nietzsche's prophecy, a future of comfortable, mediocre last men, a collective dead end for a humanity that has forgotten how to be great. But we have also seen the way out. Not a retreat to a brutal past, but a difficult climb towards a higher future. A path of self-overcoming, of creating our own values, of forging our lives like works of art. Nietzsche's message is not a comfortable one. It's a challenge, thrown across more than a century, that lands at our feet today with more urgency than ever. He forces us to look in the mirror and ask the hardest questions. Is the life you are living truly your own? Are your values a source of strength or a cage? Are you a creator, or are you just a member of the herd? The prophecy of the end of good people is not a prediction of doom. It's a warning. It's an alarm bell ringing in the night, calling us to wake up from the slumber of conformity. The world doesn't need more good people who silently obey. It needs more great individuals who have the courage to question, the strength to build, and the will to become who they truly are. The question Nietzsche leaves us with isn't for philosophers in dusty halls. It's the most personal question of all. Which will you choose to be? If this exploration of Nietzsche's philosophy resonated with you, subscribe for more deep dives into the thinkers who dare to challenge everything, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What is one herd value that you are ready to question in your own life? Your journey of self-overcoming may begin with that single act of honesty. You've been told your whole life that kindness is a virtue, that compassion is the ultimate good, that feeling pity for someone who's suffering is a sign that you're a good person. It's in our stories, our religions, our most basic moral lessons. Be kind, help people who are struggling, feel for them. But what if that's a lie? What if the act you believe is your most selfless is actually a subtle kind of poison? What if the kindest thing you can do for someone who is suffering is to let them suffer? This isn't just some edgy thought experiment. This is the core of one of the most radical and misunderstood ideas in all of philosophy, from the brilliant and controversial Friedrich Nietzsche. He argued that what we call pity isn't a strength, but a weakness. It's not a help, but a hindrance. He called it the ultimate betrayal of what a human being can be. Look around. We are surrounded by calls for empathy. We're told to feel for the less fortunate, to offer a helping hand, to shelter people from the harsh realities of life. On the surface, that sounds noble. It sounds like progress. But what if this constant, unexamined kindness is creating the very weakness it claims to solve? What if by rushing to fix everyone's pain, we're just prolonging it? What if we are actively stopping the people we care about from ever building the strength to handle their own lives? This isn't an argument for cruelty. It's an argument for a much higher, much harder form of compassion. It's a journey into Nietzsche's shocking claim that pity is a depressant, a sweet-tasting venom that drains the life out of both the person who gives it and the person who gets it. We're going to dig into his philosophy to understand why he saw pity as a tool of the weak, a parasite on the human spirit, and a deep betrayal of what we're all capable of becoming. We'll look at real-life examples where unconditional kindness blows up in our faces, where help becomes a cage, and where the road paved with good intentions leads straight to a state of permanent, comfortable decay. Get ready to have one of your core beliefs challenged, because by the end of this, you might just see that real help, real compassion, doesn't always look like what you've been taught. Sometimes it looks like the exact opposite. You think you're helping. You see a friend spiraling, a family member making the same mistake for the 10th time, a colleague crumbling under the weight of their own choices, and your gut instinct is to rush in. You offer comfort. You make excuses for them. You try to shield them from the consequences. You feel pity, and you think acting on it is the right thing to do. But what if it's poison? What if your kindness is the very thing keeping them trapped? That is the uncomfortable truth Nietzsche forces us to confront. That pity, far from being a virtue, is a dangerous indulgence that keeps suffering alive and sabotages growth. So why did Nietzsche have such a massive problem with pity? To get it, we have to understand that he wasn't just attacking one feeling. He was attacking the entire foundation of Western morality, which he believed was built on a massive lie. He called it master-slave morality. Imagine an ancient world. In this world, there are two kinds of people. First, you have the masters. These are the nobles, the warriors, the leaders. They are powerful, healthy, and full of life. Their morality, Nietzsche says, is just a reflection of who they are. They look at their own strength, their courage, their pride, their ambition, and they call it good. For the master, good is noble, it's powerful, it's the ability to shape the world. So what's bad? For the master, bad isn't evil. It's just a word for everything that isn't them. The common, the weak, the timid, the pathetic. These things are bad in the way that they are low or beneath them. The master feels a pathos of distance, a fundamental gap between their own greatness and the masses. Their values are active and life-affirming. Now, think about the second group, the slaves. These are the oppressed, the weak, the poor, the suffering. They are totally powerless. They can't beat their masters with force. So, what do? They pull off what Nietzsche called the most brilliant act of revenge in human history. They flip morality completely upside down. Since they can't win in the real world, the slaves start a war in the spiritual world. They look at the master's strength and call it evil. The master's pride becomes the sin of pride. Their power becomes tyranny. Everything the noble loves about himself is suddenly redefined as a moral crime. And what becomes good in this new world? The slaves look at their own situation, which they didn't choose, and turn it into a virtue. Their weakness becomes meekness. Their inability to fight back becomes forgiveness. Their forced obedience is rebranded as humility. And most importantly, their constant suffering gives birth to the new supreme virtue, pity. Pity, in this system, is the cornerstone. It's the act of valuing suffering itself. When you feel pity for someone, you are validating the slave's entire worldview, that life is unfair, that the weak are the truly good, and that weakness is morally better than strength. For Nietzsche, Christianity was the ultimate victory of this slave morality. He took the values of the oppressed and made them universal, convincing even the masters that their own natural instincts for power and pride were sinful. So when Nietzsche attacks pity, he's not just attacking a feeling, he's attacking the engine of a moral system he saw as denying life itself. He believed this system, which he said was born from the bitter resentment, the resentment of the weak, actively works against human progress. It doesn't try to overcome weakness, it tries to make weakness the new standard. It doesn't admire strength, it tries to tear it down. This is the key. For Nietzsche, pity isn't some timeless good. It's a weapon invented by the resentful to drag everyone down. It's a value system that champions the sick and the weak at the expense of the strong and the exceptional. As he wrote, pity retards the law of evolution. It preserves things that are ripe for decline. In his eyes, pity was the grand tranquilizer of the human spirit, a force that actively stops us from reaching our potential. It is the moral excuse for stagnation. So, if pity was born from weakness, how does it actually work as a tool? According to Nietzsche, this emotion, which looks so selfless, is actually a deeply sneaky and self-serving impulse. He saw three dark truths hiding under the surface of pity. First, pity is rarely about the other person. It's really a subtle way to feel powerful. When you pity someone, you are automatically putting yourself in a superior position. You are the strong one. They are the weak one. You are the helper, they are the helpless. Nietzsche said this feeling is intoxicating, especially for people who don't have much power or accomplishment in their own lives. For them, the suffering of others is easy prey, a quick and easy chance to feel important. Think about it. There's a self-congratulatory warmth that comes from seeing yourself as the merciful one. You get to play the savior. It makes you look good to others, and more importantly to yourself. But Nietzsche says that underneath it all, it's about you. Seeing someone else's pain makes us uncomfortable. Our rush to help is often just a rush to get rid of our own unease. We want to fix their problem so that we can feel better. Pity isn't selfless giving. It's a self-serving act of taking an opportunity to feel powerful, virtuous, and comfortable again. Second, pity is a depressant. It drains the life force, what Nietzsche called the will to power, from everyone involved. For the person giving pity, it's a waste of energy. Instead of focusing on your own growth, your own challenges, you get bogged down in someone else's problems. And this can be a convenient escape. It's a lot easier to worry about another person's life than to do the hard work of conquering your own. Pity becomes a detour, a way to feel noble while avoiding your own life. For the person getting the pity, the effect is even worse. It basically validates and multiplies their suffering. Pity takes the pain of one person and makes it contagious. Nietzsche wrote that pity is an infection. A society that elevates pity as its highest value becomes a religion of comfortableness, a culture that is weak and allergic to the necessary pain of life. It creates people who are coddled and protected from the very challenges that would make them strong. Third, and this is maybe the most damning point, pity is profoundly disrespectful. It's a failure to see the potential strength in the person who is suffering. When you pity someone, you are essentially telling them, you're a victim, you're helpless, you can't beat this. You reduce them to their pain. And that's why, deep down, most people hate being pitied. It feels degrading because it is degrading. It's a judgment that you are powerless. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche's hero says, "Having seen the sufferer suffer, I was ashamed for the sake of his shame, and when I helped him, I transgressed grievously against his pride." Real respect, in a Nietzschean sense, would be to see someone's challenge and believe in their power to meet it. It's offering a hand, not out of pity for their weakness, but out of respect for their potential strength. Pity does the opposite. It tries to take their struggle away, and in doing so, robs them of the pride and growth that comes from beating it. In this light, pity isn't kindness. It's contempt wearing a mask. It's an expression of superiority, a drain on our energy, and an insult to the human spirit. It's a tool that keeps everyone weak. The person giving pity gets to feel good without doing anything great, and the person being pitied is encouraged to stay a helpless victim forever. And this brings us to the core of the betrayal. The greatest crime of pity isn't what it does to the giver, but what it does to the receiver. It's a betrayal of their future and a sabotage of the one thing Nietzsche valued most: self-overcoming. To get this, we have to talk about Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or overman. The Übermensch isn't a person, it's an ideal, a goal for humanity. It's the person who has totally mastered themselves, who creates their own values, and who embraces all of life, both the joy and the pain. And the only way to get there is through constant struggle. For Nietzsche, suffering isn't something to run from, it's the chisel that sculpts the human soul. Hardship, failure, and pain are the weights that build our psychological muscles. Without them, we stay weak. This is where pity commits its greatest sin. Pity wants to eliminate all suffering. It rushes in to comfort and remove the very obstacles that we need for growth. By shielding someone from the consequences of their actions, pity robs them of life's most valuable lessons. It stops them from developing resilience, independence, and the strength of character that can only be forged in fire. Think of it like this. You see a kid struggling with a hard puzzle. Your first instinct might be to just solve it for them. That's an act of pity. You've eased their frustration. But what did you teach them? You taught them that when things get tough, someone else will fix it. You denied them the satisfaction of their own victory and the mental growth that comes from the struggle. Now, imagine that dynamic playing out across a person's entire life. That is the betrayal of pity. Modern psychology actually backs this up with concepts like learned helplessness. Studies have shown that when people are repeatedly put in bad situations where they have no control, they eventually stop trying to escape, even when they're given the chance. They learn to be helpless. Pity is the social engine that creates this state. It reinforces a victim mentality, encouraging people to see themselves as passive objects of bad luck. When you constantly pity someone, you're agreeing with their most helpless, powerless view of themselves. This becomes a comfortable, toxic cycle. The victim gets attention and sympathy, and the savior gets to feel needed and virtuous. It looks like a caring relationship, but it's really a pact of stagnation. The pitied person has no reason to change, because their suffering is now their main source of social and emotional currency. This is what Nietzsche saw with chilling clarity. He warned that a culture built on pity would end up protecting the very things that are ripe for decline. It would create a society of last men, a pathetic, comfortable people who only want safety, who take no risks, and who have lost the will to strive for anything great. The last man is the exact opposite of the Übermensch. He's been so sedated by the morality of pity that he's forgotten what it even means to grow or to overcome. So, the ultimate betrayal of pity is this. It steals a person's struggle. It denies them the dignity of their own fight. It looks at a block of marble, but instead of seeing the magnificent statue waiting inside, it only sees a rock that's heavy and hard. And so it wraps the rock in cotton wool, making sure it will never feel the strike of the chisel that could have revealed its hidden greatness. Some forms of kindness are a betrayal. True compassion, the kind that serves growth, isn't about eliminating suffering. It's about believing in someone's power to endure it, learn from it, and transcend it. It's looking at your struggling friend and instead of saying, "Oh, you poor thing," you say, "This is hard. I know you can beat it." Okay, the philosophy is heavy, but where do we actually see this playing out? Nietzsche's critique isn't just an abstract idea. It's a diagnosis of a sickness that can infect our jobs, our families, and our friendships. Let's start with the workplace. We praise managers for being empathetic and supportive. But what happens when that kindness isn't balanced with accountability? Imagine a manager, Sarah. She prides herself on being compassionate. One of her employees, Mark, constantly misses deadlines and delivers sloppy work, and every time Mark has a story, personal stress, family drama, feeling overwhelmed. Driven by pity, Sarah makes excuses for him. She quietly shifts his work to other team members, telling them to be patient because Mark is going through a lot. She avoids giving him the direct, tough feedback he needs because she doesn't want to add to his stress. By any normal definition, she's being a kind boss. But what's the result? First, Mark never gets better. Why would he? There are zero consequences. Sarah's pity has taught him that excuses work just as well as results. He's shielded from the professional failure that would force him to learn better skills or actually deal with his issues. He's not growing at all. Second, the team's morale tanks. The best performers are now resentful. They're stuck with extra work to cover for Mark, and they see that the rules don't apply to everyone. Sarah's kindness to one person has become an injustice to everyone else. Her attempt to fix a problem with pity has actually poisoned the whole team. Now let's look at the family, where this happens all the time. Think of a parent who shields their child from any and all failure. The kid forgets their homework, the parent drives it to school. The kid doesn't make the team, the parent complains to the coach. The kid has a small fight with a friend. The parent swoops in to solve it. These parents are driven by love and pity. They can't stand to see their child unhappy, even for a second. But by trying to create a world with no friction, they are sabotaging their child's development. They are preventing their child from building what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief in your own ability to handle things. By always rescuing them, the parent sends a powerful unspoken message. You are not capable. The child never learns to solve problems, cope with disappointment, or take responsibility. They grow up dependent and fragile, and when they finally hit the real world, where mom and dad can't fix everything, they're completely unprepared. They crumble at the first real challenge. The parents' pity, which felt like love, was actually a form of developmental betrayal. Finally, think about our friendships. We've all known, or maybe even been, the chronic fixer. This is the friend who is always drawn to people who are a mess. They become the emotional dumping ground for a friend who is always in crisis. Bad relationships, money problems, career drama, you name it. The fixer listens for hours, gives endless advice, and gets totally exhausted trying to manage their friend's life. The fixer feels deep pity for their friend. They think they're being a good, supportive friend, but the friend in crisis never actually changes. They repeat the same mistakes because they know the fixer will always be there to clean up the emotional mess. The friend in crisis has become an energy vampire, draining the fixer's resources. The fixer's pity is what allows this toxic cycle to continue. It prevents the friend from ever hitting a rock bottom that might force them to genuinely change. The relationship isn't about mutual support, it's about parasitic dependency. Eventually, the fixer gets burned out and resentful, while the friend stays stuck. The help wasn't help at all, it was just sustaining the pain. In all of these cases, the intention was good, the emotion was pity, but the outcome was a betrayal of growth, proving the hard truth in Nietzsche's critique, that some kindness, when it's totally unconditional and unexamined, isn't a virtue. It's a force that prolongs pain and stops people from finding the strength they never knew they had. If this idea from Nietzsche has you thinking, if it's challenging how you see what it means to truly help someone, then stick around and subscribe. We're always dissecting powerful and provocative ideas and seeing how they apply to our lives today. And now, I want to hear from you. This is a tough, personal topic. Where have you seen this in your own life? Have you ever had help that was actually a hindrance? Or have you been the one helping too much? Share your stories in the comments. Let's grapple with these hard questions together. Finally, if you find value in this kind of content and want to help us make more of it, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Your support lets us do the deep research it takes to bring these ideas to light. We started with a subversive question. What if pity is a poison? We've walked through Nietzsche's radical claim that this celebrated virtue is actually a profound betrayal of what humanity can be. We saw his theory that pity was born from the resentment of the weak, a slave morality that chooses to glorify suffering instead of overcoming it. We explored how it works as a subtle power play, a drain on our energy, and an insult to the person who is suffering. And most importantly, we saw how this plays out in the real world, where unconditional kindness can become a trap that stifles growth and fosters dependency. Now, it's easy to hear all this and think Nietzsche is just arguing for being a cold-hearted jerk. But that's a total misreading. He's calling for a higher, harder, and more honest form of compassion. He makes a distinction between pity, Mitleid, and a life-affirming empathy that actually respects the other person's capacity for strength. True compassion, in this tougher sense, isn't about shielding people from hardship. It's about empowering them to face it. It's about seeing the potential for greatness in everyone and refusing to insult that potential with the degrading stare of pity. It means understanding that struggle isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the prerequisite for growth. It means having the guts to step back and let someone fight their own battle. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to want them to win a victory that is truly their own. This philosophy demands that we question our most comfortable instincts. It asks us to balance our kindness with the commitment to building real strength in ourselves and in others. So, I'll leave you with a question to carry with you. The next time you feel that pull to help someone, ask yourself this: is what I'm about to do an affirmation of their strength, or is it an indulgence in their weakness? Is my kindness helping them grow, or is it a betrayal, keeping them comfortable in their own decline? The answer might be uncomfortable, but in that discomfort is the path to a much deeper and more meaningful way of helping our fellow human beings. You're the reliable one, right? The helpful one, the person who never says no. You believe that makes you a good person. But what if I told you that this relentless, compulsive kindness is actually a sophisticated form of self-sabotage? That the bone-deep exhaustion and the quiet, simmering resentment you feel aren't just side effects of being good, but the whole point of a psychological trap you've set for yourself. This isn't about being a little nicer to yourself. This is a journey into the architecture of your own suffering. We'll connect the dots from the radical philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche to the cutting edge of modern trauma theory, and you'll see how these two worlds point to one startling conclusion. Your niceness might be the most unkind thing you do to yourself and, paradoxically, to others. It's time to question the very foundation of what you believe makes you a good person. Because what you're about to discover might just set you free. Let's see if this sounds familiar. It's 5:01 p.m. on a Friday. You can practically taste the weekend. Then a message pops up from a colleague. Hey, so sorry to do this, but could you just take a quick look at this report? I'd be eternally grateful. Your stomach clenches. Every cell in your body screams, no, my time is mine. But what you type back is, of course, no problem at all, send it over. Or maybe it's a text from a friend. Change of plans. Can we meet at that new place across town instead? I know it's an hour drive for you, but it's just so much easier for me. You're already putting your shoes on. The inconvenience is a lead weight on your shoulders. Yet you reply, sounds great, see you there, with a cheerful emoji that feels like a total lie. Maybe it's the holiday dinner. You're asked again to host, cook and clean because you're just so good at it. You smile and agree, while a bitter voice in your head whispers, I am not good at it. I am just too afraid to say no. This isn't kindness. It's a compulsion. It's a pattern where you consistently prioritize others at your own expense. It's self-erasure disguised as virtue. The real tell wasn't the act of giving, but the feeling that you have no choice. You don't feel like you are choosing to be helpful. You feel like you must be helpful to keep the peace, earn affection, or just survive the moment without conflict. Each time you say yes when you mean no, you cast a vote against yourself. You teach your own mind that your needs are secondary, your time is less valuable, and your feelings are an inconvenience. You become a supporting character in everyone else's story, while the hero of your own story goes missing. If this sounds painfully familiar, take a deep breath. You are not alone. And more importantly, You are not a bad person for feeling the weight of your own goodness. You are simply caught in a very common trap. Resentment is the rust of the soul. It doesn't show up in one big flash. It's a slow, creeping corrosion that comes from thousands of tiny self-betrayals. Every time you swallow your own needs, a tiny layer of bitterness forms. Think of your emotional energy like a reservoir. Genuine acts of kindness, the ones you choose freely, are like a clear stream flowing in and out. But compulsive kindness, the kind born from fear, is different. Each time you say yes when you want to say no, it's like a drop of mud falling into your reservoir. The first few drops don't make a difference, but the 100th, the 1000th, they start to turn the water murky. Over months and years, your clear reservoir of goodwill becomes a stagnant pool of resentment. You start feeling irritated with the very people you're trying so hard to please. Their requests, which you used to meet with a strained smile, now spark a flash of anger. You find yourself keeping a silent tally of every favor and sacrifice, waiting for a payback that never seems to come. This is the poison of people-pleasing. It doesn't just exhaust you, it makes you secretly dislike the people you're helping. Worse, it makes you dislike yourself for feeling that way. You get stuck in a vicious cycle. You give out of obligation, you feel resentful, then you feel guilty for being resentful, which you take as proof that you're a bad person. This guilt then pushes you to give even more, and the cycle spirals. Eventually, that reservoir overflows. It might be a sudden, shocking outburst of anger that seems totally out of proportion. It could be a passive-aggressive comment loaded with years of frustration. Or it can be a cold, silent withdrawal from a relationship, leaving the other person confused because you never gave them the honest feedback they needed to understand what was happening. This isn't a character flaw, it's the predictable outcome of a life lived for others. And here's the most painful part of the trap. The very thing you do to feel connected is what makes real connection impossible. You think being agreeable and accommodating builds strong relationships. It doesn't. You're building a relationship with a ghost. The person your friends, family, and colleagues know isn't the real you. It's a carefully managed representative. A mask of agreeability you wear to be accepted. They like the mask, they appreciate the mask, they may even love the mask, but they don't know the person behind it. The one with needs, opinions, and limits. This leads to a profound kind of loneliness. You can be in a room full of people who seem to adore you, yet feel completely invisible. On some level, you know their affection is conditional. It's for the you who performed, not the you who is. You feel loved for your function, not for your essence. This dynamic also prevents genuine intimacy. Real connection requires friction. It requires honesty, negotiation, and the ability to say, "That doesn't work for me." When you eliminate all conflict by always giving in, you also eliminate the chance for two real people to meet. You train others that you don't have needs, so they never learn to consider them. Often, people can sense this fakeness. There's a feeling that something is being held back. Your kindness, because it isn't coming from an authentic place, can feel transactional, like you're trying to buy their approval. You spend all this energy trying to be loved, only to build a life where you are fundamentally unknowable. It is the ultimate self-defeating strategy. If resentment is the emotional cost, burnout is the bill coming due for your body and mind. You are not designed for constant self-neglect. Your energy is a finite resource, and when you constantly put everyone else first, a crash isn't just possible. It's inevitable. Burnout here is more than just feeling tired. It's a state of chronic exhaustion. It feels like waking up with an empty tank every single day. Small tasks feel huge. Your patience is gone. The things that once brought you joy now feel like chores. Physically, the chronic stress of hiding your own needs can show up as constant fatigue, insomnia, headaches, or getting sick all the time. Your body is screaming for a break, but you've trained yourself not to listen. Emotionally, burnout looks like cynicism and detachment. You start to dread social events because you know you'll have to perform. You feel numb, disconnected from yourself and from others. You're running on fumes, and the only way to conserve energy is to shut down. Mentally, you can't concentrate. Your motivation is gone. You might feel like a failure, blaming yourself for being exhausted, instead of seeing it as a natural response to an unsustainable way of living. This is the final stage of the trap. You have given until there is nothing left, and you are left empty, resentful, and alone, all because you are trying so hard to be good. This is the problem. This is the trap. And to escape it, we have to understand why we built it. For that, we need to turn to a philosopher who wasn't afraid to look at the dark side of morality. So, why do we do it? Why do we walk into a trap that leaves us exhausted and resentful? The easy answer, I just want to be a good person, doesn't cut it anymore. It doesn't explain the pain. To get to the real root, we have to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a 19th century philosopher who put morality under a microscope. He argued that we rarely ask why we think things like kindness, humility, and self-sacrifice are good. We just assume they are. He wanted to trace these values back to their source, and what he found was unsettling. He saw two basic kinds of morality. First, what he called master morality. This is the morality of the powerful. This person decides for themselves what is good. For them, good means strong, excellent, and life-affirming. Bad means weak, timid, and pathetic. But then there's the second type, which Nietzsche said took over the world, herd morality, which he also called slave morality. He claimed this was invented by the weak and oppressed as a survival tool. Since they couldn't win by the master's rules, they flipped the whole game board over through a valuation of all values. The herd declared that the master's strengths, their pride, their ambition, their power, were actually evil. And the herd's own traits, their humility, their obedience, their pity, were rebranded as good. Weakness became goodness of heart, fear became humility, and submitting to people you hated became obedience. Kindness wasn't praised because it was noble, but because it was useful for the group's survival. It leveled the playing field and kept the strong in check. Nietzsche's radical point is this: a lot of what we call goodness isn't born from strength and generosity, it's born from fear, weakness, and resentment. It's a survival strategy for the herd designed to make everyone safer and more predictable. So when you feel that compulsive need to be nice, Nietzsche would ask you to question where it comes from. Is this kindness flowing from a place of genuine strength and abundance? Or is it the fearful voice of the herd instinct, whispering that you must be useful, you must not rock the boat, or you will be cast out of the group? Nietzsche said we need to critique our moral values and ask what they're really worth. So let's make this personal. Let's do a genealogy of your own kindness. Where did you first learn that your needs were a problem? When did you decide that your value was based on how useful you are to others? As we dig, we find that Nietzsche's philosophy lines up perfectly with modern psychology. He gave us the why, and psychology gives us the how. Think back to your childhood. For many of us, this is where the training began. Maybe you grew up in a home where love was conditional. You only got praise when you were good, meaning quiet, helpful, and undemanding. You learned that your anger or sadness was an inconvenience to the adults around you, a burden. So you learned to bury it. You became an expert at reading the room, sensing what others needed and giving it to them, just to keep the peace. Or maybe you grew up in a chaotic home, where disagreeing with a caregiver could lead to punishment. In that world, being agreeable and invisible wasn't a choice. It was a brilliant survival strategy. You learned to make yourself small, to stay safe. This isn't a flaw. It's your nervous system adapting to its environment. And this brings us to one of the most important ideas for understanding the dark side of kindness. Most of us have heard of the trauma responses: fight, flight, and freeze. But in recent years, trauma specialists like author Pete Walker have highlighted a fourth and critical response: fawn. Fawning is the instinct to appease a threat. When you can't fight it and you can't flee from it, which is the reality for a child dependent on caregivers, the nervous system defaults to a strategy of placating and accommodating to neutralize the danger. The fawn response is simply people-pleasing as a survival mechanism. What starts as a smart strategy in childhood becomes a deeply ingrained, automatic habit in adulthood. Your brain gets wired to see any potential conflict or disapproval as a threat to your safety. So the fawn response kicks in. That clench in your gut when a colleague asks for that late-night favor, that's your nervous system flagging a threat and deploying the only strategy it knows to feel safe again: appease. This reframes your kindness completely. It isn't a conscious moral choice. It's an old trauma response. It's not about generosity. It's about a desperate, unconscious attempt to feel safe. The compulsion to be nice is driven by a deep-seated fear of rejection that's wired right into your biology. You are not being kind. You are managing your own anxiety. The society often rewards this, especially in women and marginalized groups, which makes it even harder to see as the unhealthy pattern it is. This is where Nietzsche's tough ideas start to make a lot of sense. He argued that most selfless acts aren't selfless at all. They are, in fact, cleverly hidden acts of selfishness. When you say yes because you're afraid of someone's disappointment, who are you really serving? Are you helping them, or are you helping yourself avoid the discomfort of their reaction? You are choosing your own short-term comfort, avoiding conflict over your long-term well-being and honesty. It's a selfish act disguised as a selfless one. This is the hypocrisy Nietzsche was talking about. We tell ourselves a noble story: I am a kind person. But the deeper, more honest story is often, I am terrified of what will happen if I stop being useful. This leads to what Nietzsche called a bad conscience. Your natural impulses, your need for rest, your right to your own time, your authentic no, have been labeled selfish and bad by the herd morality you've internalized. So the moment you even think about putting yourself first, an internal alarm of guilt goes off. That guilt is the bad conscience. It's the herd's police force, living in your head, making sure you don't stray. This whole dynamic creates an incredibly fragile sense of self. If your goodness is defined by how useful you are, then your self-worth is entirely external. You need to be needed to feel valuable. It's not a desire, it's an addiction. You seek out chances to be helpful, to solve problems, to sacrifice, because each act gives you a temporary hit of validation. It proves you have a right to be here. But this is a terrifying way to live. Your sense of self is a hostage to the demands of others. If someone doesn't need you, or even rejects your help, it can feel like your world is collapsing. Who are you if you are not useful? What value do you have if you are not serving? This is the ultimate trap that both Nietzsche and modern psychology point to. We think we're acting out of love for others, but we're often acting out of a fear of our own emptiness. We use other people's needs to distract ourselves from the terrifying work of figuring out our own. We get so busy being everything to everyone else that we never have to ask the most important question: what do I want? Who am I? separate from what I do for others. Escaping the trap means finally facing that question. We've just gone into some deep territory. We've looked at the pain of the problem and used some big ideas to reframe it, not as a moral failing, but as a survival pattern. If you're recognizing yourself in this, if you're feeling that difficult aha moment, I want you to take a small, real step right now. Go to the comments and write this. I am reclaiming my no. This isn't for me. It's a signal to yourself that you see the pattern. It's a declaration to a community of people right here who get it. It's the first word in a new chapter. After diagnosing the problem, it's easy to fall into another trap. The fear is that if you stop being a compulsive people pleaser, you'll become a cold, selfish jerk. This is a false choice. It's the black and white thinking of the herd morality that says you are either selfless or you are evil. Our goal isn't to abandon kindness. It's to reclaim it. It's to evolve from compulsive kindness to conscious kindness. From the kindness of a slave to the kindness of a master. Of your own self. Let's call it intelligent kindness. Compulsive kindness comes from a place of fear and deficit. It's giving from an empty cup, hoping the act of giving will somehow fill it. It never does. Intelligent kindness comes from a place of strength and abundance. It's a conscious choice, not an automatic reaction. It's rooted in a solid sense of self-worth that doesn't need constant outside approval. It is giving from a full cup because you've first taken the time to fill your own. This is the only kindness that truly nourishes both people, because it's authentic and given freely, not as a transaction to buy safety. The journey there isn't about learning to be mean, it's about learning to be honest, starting with yourself. Moving from compulsion to consciousness is a practice. It takes real tools to break old habits. Here are 3 things you can start doing today. The fun response is fast. A request comes in, and yes is out of your mouth before you can even think. Your most powerful weapon is the pause. When someone asks you for something, your only job is to buy time. You have to create a space between their request and your response. This pause isn't rude. It's strategic. It interrupts the automatic trauma response and lets the thinking part of your brain catch up. Your new scripts are phrases that create this space. Memorize them. Instead of, yes, of course, try, let me check my calendar and get back to you. I need to think about that for a minute. Let me see if that's possible. I'll let you know. Sorry. I'll have to check my capacity for that. Notice, these aren't a no. They are a not yet. This makes them much easier to say at first. The pause is where you take back your power to choose. You don't start marathon training by running 26 miles on day 1. In the same way, you don't learn to set boundaries by starting with the scariest person in your life. You have to build your boundary muscle with small interactions. The barista asks if you want to add a pastry. Just say a calm, no thanks. A street canvasser asks for a moment. Instead of fumbling for an excuse, make eye contact, say, I'm not interested, and keep walking. A friend calls at a bad time. Let it go to voicemail. Or answer and say, hey, I can't talk now. Can I call you back in an hour? These small acts are a huge deal. Each one strengthens the neural pathway for self-respect. Each one proves to your nervous system that saying no won't cause a catastrophe. You're building confidence for the bigger stuff. For those situations where a blunt no feels like too much, you can use a transitional tool called the no sandwich. It softens the blow while keeping the boundary firm. It has 3 parts. 1. Affirm, the first slice of bread, and true. I really appreciate you thinking of me for this. Thanks so much for the invitation. That sounds fun. 2. The direct and clear. Don't say, I don't think I can. Say, I can't. Say, I'm not able to, instead of, I wish I could. For example, I'm not able to take that on right now, or I won't be able to make it. 3. This is optional. It's just a simple expression of goodwill. I'll be cheering for you. I hope you all have a great time. A word of caution. This is a bridge, not a destination. The goal is to get comfortable with a clean no that needs no excuse. But the sandwich is a great tool to get you started. When you start to change, things will get uncomfortable, both inside you and around you. You have to be ready. The moment you set your first real boundary, guilt will come rushing in. That's the bad conscience we talked about. The internalized voice screaming that you're being selfish. You must learn to see this feeling differently. Guilt is the withdrawal symptom of your addiction to people-pleasing. That guilt does not mean you've done something wrong. It means you're doing something different. It's a sign that you are finally prioritizing yourself, maybe for the first time. The discomfort is a sign of growth. When guilt shows up, don't treat it like a stop sign. Acknowledge it. Tell yourself, there's that old feeling. My nervous system is just recalibrating. This is what healing feels like. When you change the rules, some people will protest. These are usually the people who benefited most from you not having boundaries. They might act surprised, angry, or try to guilt you. They might say, you've changed, or I can't believe you're being so selfish. Their reaction is not about you. It's data. It tells you about the true nature of your relationship. Was it based on mutual respect, or was it based on your compliance? People who genuinely care for you might be surprised at first, but they will adapt and respect you. People who are just taking advantage of you will protest, and they might even leave. Let them. Your new boundaries are a filter. They are designed to keep people who respect you close and weed out those who just use you. Losing a relationship that was built on your self-erasure is not a loss. It is a liberation. We started this journey in the shadow of our own goodness, a place of exhaustion and resentment. We saw how the compulsive need to please was a trap, keeping us from real connection and a real sense of self. We used Nietzsche's fierce honesty to question our own morality and saw how our niceness could be a strategy born from fear. Then modern psychology showed us the mechanism, the fawn response, a survival skill from our past that became a prison in our present. But the point was never to stay in the darkness of the diagnosis. It's to walk into the solution. It's to start the work of redefining kindness, moving from the fearful giving of a people-pleaser to the conscious, chosen giving of someone who is master of their own life. You now have the tools, the pause, the low-stakes practice, and the compassionate no. You're prepared for the backlash, ready to see guilt as a sign of healing and protests from others as valuable information. This isn't an easy path. It's the work of a lifetime. It is the act of becoming who you truly are. The ultimate kindness is not to erase yourself for others. It is to build a self that is strong enough and whole enough to give freely from a cup that is already overflowing. The goal isn't to become selfish. The goal is to become sustainably kind and to finally include yourself in the circle of your own compassion. It is to decide for yourself what good really means. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more journeys into the psychology of a well-lived life. And if you haven't yet, make that declaration in the comments. Your journey begins with a single powerful word: no. You're the person everyone relies on. the dependable friend, the supportive partner, the go-to colleague who always says yes. You pride yourself on being there for others, on being kind and selfless. You believe, somewhere deep down, that this is just the right way to be. But let me ask you, when was the last time you picked up that guitar? When did you last open that half-finished novel, or just sit and sketch for an hour? When was the last time you did something just for you? Not for your job, not for your family, but purely for the raw joy of making something. If you can't remember, if that question just landed with a heavy, uncomfortable thud in your gut, then you might be caught in what I call the sacrifice trap. It's a quiet, creeping vine that wraps around your life so gradually you don't even notice it. You tell yourself you're just being a good person, but all the while it's silently siphoning away your creative lifeblood, draining your passions until one day you look up and realize the well is dry. You feel exhausted, maybe a little resentful, and haunted by the ghost of the creative person you know you used to be. Today, we're not just going to expose this trap, we're going to understand how it works, where it comes from, and most importantly, walk through how to systematically take it apart. We're going to chart a path back to yourself, a way to reclaim the vibrant, innovative, and creative life that you don't just want, but that you deserve. So, what exactly is the sacrifice trap? It's more than just being nice or putting others first once in a while. The sacrifice trap is a deeply ingrained pattern where you habitually and instinctively prioritize the needs and desires of others over your own. And the two keywords here are habitually and instinctively. This isn't a conscious choice anymore. It's your default setting. It's a reflex. This pattern is often rooted in our earliest experiences. Many of us learned in childhood what psychologists call a self-sacrifice schema. We learned one way or another that getting love, approval, and feeling worthy was tied to our selflessness. Maybe you were the responsible kid who had to grow up too fast. Maybe you were praised for being easy and low management, and you learn that your own needs were an inconvenience. Or maybe you just grow up in a family or culture that taught you self-denial was the same thing as being a good person. That conditioning is powerful. It gets wired right into our nervous system. Over time, it becomes our identity. We start to see ourselves as the helper, the supporter, or the rock. And for a while, it feels good. It gives us a sense of purpose. But a dangerous side effect starts to take root. We begin to feel an overwhelming guilt, or even feel profoundly selfish anytime we think about asserting our own needs, our own desires, or our creative impulses. The world around us often reinforces this trap through something we can call moral kidnapping. This is where your own sense of morality gets hijacked by the expectations of others. Your kindness is no longer seen as a gift you give, but an obligation you have to fulfill. You basically become a public utility. Friends call to vent for hours, but never think to ask how you're doing. Family expects you to drop everything for their latest crisis, assuming your time is infinitely flexible. At work, you're always the one picking up the slack because that's just what you do. In this system, your value is measured by your service to others, not by your own self-expression. And the most insidious part, you become complicit in your own kidnapping. You tell yourself, this is what it means to be a good friend, a good partner, a good person. Does that sound familiar? That nagging feeling that your own life is on the back burner, simmering away while you serve up feasts for everyone else? That's the feeling of the trap closing in. It's the slow, creeping realization that you are living for everyone but yourself. And the cost is the very thing that makes you feel alive. Your creativity. There's a phrase that captures the existential danger of this perfectly. Everyone consumes you as a matter of course. Just sit with that for a second. consumed as a matter of course. It's not malicious. People aren't the villains in this story. They just get used to it. Your energy, your time, your focus, it all becomes a resource for them to draw on, and they do it without a second thought. You become a well that is supposed to never run dry, until of course it does. And this is where we find the great lie of the sacrifice trap, the lie of kindness. For many of us, this excessive kindness is actually a mask. It's a shield we use to hide our fear of conflict, our fear of being seen as selfish, our deep-seated terror of rejection. We think that if we are endlessly agreeable, endlessly giving, then we can't be abandoned or criticized. But this constant performance of people-pleasing erodes our authenticity. And creativity cannot exist without authenticity. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with watered-down beige paint. Because you're afraid that vibrant colors might offend someone. To really get why this trap annihilates creativity, we need to bring in a radical idea from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the will to power. Now, this concept is often misunderstood as some brutish desire to dominate others. But in Nietzsche's philosophy, it's something much deeper. The will to power is the fundamental drive inside every living thing to expand, to grow, to express its strength, and to shape its environment. It's the drive of a seed to burst through the soil, or the drive of a musician to wrestle a melody out of thin air. In short, the will to power is the engine of creation. And here's the central conflict you cannot avoid. Habitual self-sacrifice is the direct philosophical opposite of the will to power. Self-sacrifice is an act of self-negation. It's the quieting of your own impulses and the surrender of your own will. The will to create is an act of self-affirmation. It's the honoring of your impulses and the assertion of your unique vision onto the world. You simply cannot do both at the same time. You can't affirm and negate yourself in the same breath. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to your creative energy. Every time you swallow your own idea to avoid rocking the boat, you weaken the muscle of your will to power. And this isn't just abstract philosophy. Think of the parent who was a passionate painter before having kids. Their life is now a whirlwind of school runs, meal prep, and schedules. They tell themselves art is a selfish indulgence. Years pass. The easel in the corner gathers a thick layer of dust, a monument to a forgotten part of their soul. They love their children fiercely, but a quiet resentment starts to build, a burnout that feels like a betrayal of both their family and themselves. Or think of the brilliant writer who has become the unpaid therapist for their entire friend group. Their phone is a constant stream of other people's crises. They give incredible advice for hours, but when they finally sit down at their laptop to face their own story, they are completely hollowed out. They've spent all their storytelling energy on other people's lives. Their great novel is still stuck on chapter 1. The end result of all this is a state we can call creative nihilism. It's a creeping belief that your own ideas, your passions, and your voice just don't matter. You lose your identity and become a function in other people's lives. The sacrifice trap doesn't just make you tired, it makes you disappear. Look, if any of this is hitting home, if you're feeling seen right now, take a moment to hit the like button. It's a small act of saying, this is real, and it helps this video find other people who might be stuck in the same place. And please, stick with me. Because we're about to shift gears. We've diagnosed the problem, and now we're going to get into the solution. How you can start today to take this trap apart. Section 3. The solution. Escaping the trap with Nietzsche's rebellion. The way out of this trap isn't to become a jerk. It's not about abandoning kindness. The solution is a much deeper philosophical shift. For your entire life, you've believed that your value lies in your usefulness to others. The rebellion begins when you dare to embrace a new truth. Your true value is not kindness, but creation. This is the core of the solution, inspired by Nietzsche's philosophy. Let's break it down into 4 steps. The word Übermensch, or overman, is probably Nietzsche's most misunderstood concept. It has nothing to do with the master race. The Übermensch is a symbol for the person who has overcome the herd morality of their time. The person who stops looking for external rules and has the courage to create their own values and become the author of their own life. Here's how to make that practical. You must start seeing yourself first and foremost as a creator. Your primary duty is not to please everyone around you. It is to the potential that exists inside you. This is a deep internal shift. It's about giving yourself permission to be the hero of your own story, not a side character in someone else's. Your life is your greatest work of art, and you are its sole artist. You have to believe that nurturing your creativity isn't selfish, but the most important responsibility you have. Nietzsche wasn't against sacrifice itself. He was against the life-denying sacrifice that leads to nothing. In fact, he believed another kind of sacrifice was essential for greatness. Sacrificing your comfort, your security, and the approval of others for the sake of your own growth. This is where the real work starts. You have to consciously choose to sacrifice the lesser thing for the greater thing. The lesser thing is the temporary comfort of saying yes to everyone. The greater thing is the long-term fulfillment of creating. Here's what you can do. Start making small, strategic sacrifices that serve your creative will. Sacrifice 1 hour of mindless scrolling on your phone and dedicate it to writing or practicing an instrument. Sacrifice saying yes to that social event you don't really want to go to, so you can say yes to a date with your own project. Sacrifice the comfort of staying quiet in a meeting and voice your innovative idea. Sacrifice your need to be liked by setting a clear boundary with a friend or family member who always drains your energy. Think of each of these as a rep at the gym. Each small act of rebellion against the trap strengthens your resolve and reclaims a tiny piece of your creative territory. People in the sacrifice trap see boundaries as aggressive walls that push people away. That's the wrong frame. You have to see boundaries differently. They aren't walls. They are the sacred fences that protect the fertile ground where your creativity grows. Without those fences, the garden of your mind will just get trampled and consumed by everyone else. This has to be practical. First, time blocking. Schedule your creative work in your calendar like it's the most important meeting of the week, because it is. When someone asks for that time, you can honestly say, "I'm sorry, I have a commitment, I can't move." You don't owe them any more justification than that. Second, verbal scripts. Have a few polite phrases ready so you aren't caught off guard. Instead of a flustered, I don't know, try a calm and clear, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I don't have the capacity for that right now." Or, "I can't commit to that, as my focus needs to be on another project." Practice saying them out loud. Saying no is a muscle. Third, energy management. Start auditing your life. Who and what gives you energy? Who and what drains it? Make deliberate choices to limit your exposure to people and situations that leave you depleted. Your creative energy is a finite, precious resource. Protect it as fiercely as you would your home. The final step is to fundamentally change the story you tell yourself about who you are. For years, your identity has been the helpful one, the reliable one. That story has kept you trapped. It's time to write a new one. Start consciously changing your self-talk. Instead of thinking of yourself as a people pleaser, start identifying as a writer, an artist, a musician, an innovator. When you change the identity, your actions start to follow. You'll make choices that line up with this new, more authentic story. Here is a powerful journaling prompt for you. If I were not afraid of being selfish, and if my only goal was to honor my creative potential, who would I be? What would I do with my time? What would I create? Spend real time with that question. Let the answers come without judgment. This is how you get reacquainted with your authentic self, the one who has been buried under years of obligations. This is how you escape the moral kidnapping. You take back control of your own story. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've put a name to the sacrifice trap, that pattern of putting everyone else first that society loves to praise. We've looked at how it systematically suffocates the will to power that all true creation needs, and we've laid out a 4-step path to freedom. But if there is only one thing you take away from this video, let it be this: you are not selfish for prioritizing your creative life. It is not an indulgence or a luxury. It is a fundamental human drive, and honoring it is essential for a life of meaning. The world has had plenty of your kindness. It has benefited from your service. But that is not all you have to give. The world is now desperate for the things that only you can create: your art, your music, your ideas, your unique and irreplaceable voice. To sacrifice that gift on the altar of other people's expectations is the greatest tragedy of all. So I have a question, and I want you to be honest in the comments below. What is one small creative act you will reclaim for yourself this week? What boundary will you set to protect the time for it? By sharing it, you make a promise to yourself, and you join a community of people all learning to escape the same trap, reminding each other that we all have a right to our own creative fire. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into creativity, psychology, and philosophy. Now go. Stop serving and start creating. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Like you're following a script written by someone else? We're all born into a world of pre-written rules, inherited values, and expectations that stick to us like a second skin. We're told who to be, what to believe, and how to act, and we learn to play our parts so well that we often forget we're even acting. But then, in those quiet moments, a question starts to bubble up. Is this really me? Is this life truly mine? What if the key to becoming who you are meant to be lies in the story of a philosopher who dared to declare that God is dead? Not as a cry of despair, but as a declaration of terrifying absolute freedom. This is the story of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical awakening, a journey forged in sickness, solitude, and pure intellectual rebellion. It's the story of how he tore down the pillars of his own identity to rebuild himself from the bedrock of his own will. And it's a story that offers us a demanding but practical guide to our own transformation, to finally become who we truly are. To understand the earthquake that was Nietzsche, you first have to understand the world he wanted to demolish. The late 19th century was an era of dizzying change. The tremors of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution had shaken the foundations of the West. Science was questioning faith. New technologies were rewriting the rules of life. And yet the old moral architecture, the old rules about right and wrong, remained stubbornly in place. This architecture was Christian morality, a system Nietzsche saw not as a divine truth, but as a 2,000-year-old cage. This morality, he argued, celebrated pity, humility, and self-sacrifice, virtues that, in his eyes, were born from weakness and resentment. It was a system designed to make the individual conform, to tame the wild, powerful, and creative sparks of human nature, and make them predictable, manageable, small. This herd mentality, as he called it, pressures everyone into a state of comfortable mediocrity. It discourages the very things that lead to greatness: independence, courage, and the will to stand utterly alone. People were living under the shadow of a God they were starting to doubt, yet they clung desperately to the morality he supposedly created. It was a world of profound inauthenticity, where people were cut off from their own instincts, their own power, and their own potential. They were, in Nietzsche's view, living a lie, just actors in a drama whose script they hadn't written and whose purpose they no longer truly believed in. This is the core problem Nietzsche identified, a kind of spiritual sickness he felt with agonizing intensity. It's the problem of what we might call a moral kidnapping, the theft of our own selfhood by outside forces that tell us what is good and what is evil, robbing us of the power to create our own values. He saw a world of people who had forgotten how to be masters of their own lives, becoming instead actors, just reciting lines, their true selves buried deep beneath layers of what society expected them to be. Nietzsche wasn't born a rebel. He was born in 1844 into a family steeped in Lutheran piety. With a father and two grandfathers who were ministers, his childhood was defined by the very religious tradition he would later try to dismantle. After his father died young, he grew up in a household of women, his mother, sister, grandmother, and aunts. A deeply serious and brilliant child. He was so devout that his classmates at the prestigious Shelfota boarding school apparently called him the little pastor. He went to university to study theology and classical philology, the detailed study of ancient texts. He was on the fast track to becoming a respected academic. But under the surface, a deep disillusionment was growing. He wrestled with his faith, writing to his sister that he could no longer be content with religious happiness. He had to become a disciple of the truth, no matter where it led him. Then he discovered the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, and that changed everything. In Schopenhauer, Nietzsche found a voice that spoke honestly about the world's inherent suffering and the blind, striving, cosmic will that drives all of existence. It was a bleak, pessimistic worldview, but it was also godless and unflinching, and it spoke directly to Nietzsche's growing dissatisfaction. It gave him the intellectual tools to begin breaking away from his religious upbringing. But Nietzsche's transformation wasn't just intellectual, it was intensely physical. For most of his adult life, he was tormented by horrible health problems, excruciating migraines, violent stomach issues, and failing eyesight that made reading and writing a constant, painful struggle. This chronic illness isn't just a footnote in his biography, it's central to his philosophy. It forced him into isolation and turned his focus inward. His own suffering became his primary philosophical subject. He started to see his life as a laboratory for understanding the human condition, framing his entire philosophical project as a journey from illness to health. Sickness was being trapped by external ideals and being unhappy with life. Health was the act of freeing yourself and affirming life in all its pain and glory. He was, as he later wrote, forced to be both physician and patient in one, using philosophy not as some abstract game, but as a tool for his own survival and healing. Every great transformation requires a powerful act of rejection. For Nietzsche, this meant breaking with the two giants who had shaped his early intellectual life: the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer and the composer Richard Wagner. Wagner especially was more than a friend, he was a father figure and, for a while, Nietzsche's idol. At just 24, Nietzsche became a professor at the University of Basel and was soon a welcome guest at the Wagner home. His first book, The Birth of Tragedy, explored the idea of culture as a battle between the wild, chaotic spirit of Dionysus and the orderly, rational spirit of Apollo. And in Wagner's epic operas, Nietzsche saw a modern rebirth of that tragic Dionysian spirit, a potential savior for a culture he felt had grown stale. But the hero worship couldn't last. Nietzsche, the champion of independent thought, started to see Wagner's massive ego, his German nationalism, and his anti-Semitism as contemptible. The final break came with Wagner's opera, Parsifal. In this work, Nietzsche saw a cowardly retreat, a submission to Christian themes of pity and redemption. To Nietzsche, Wagner had betrayed art itself, kneeling before the very cross that represented the life-denying morality they had once sworn to overcome. His break with Schopenhauer was more philosophical, but just as total. While he'd been electrified by Schopenhauer's honesty about suffering, he ultimately found his mentor's pessimism to be just another way of denying life. Schopenhauer's answer to the world's pain was resignation, a turning away from the will to live. For the maturing Nietzsche, this was just not an acceptable answer. His own experience with suffering wasn't teaching him to renounce life, but to affirm it more fiercely than ever. He realized that to overcome suffering, you don't run from it. You have to embrace it and use it to become stronger. These breaks weren't just intellectual disagreements, they were declarations of independence. They were Nietzsche's first major acts of self-overcoming, of saying no to the masters he had once worshipped. By turning his back on Wagner and Schopenhauer, he was clearing the ground to build his own philosophy, a philosophy not of resignation, but of radical, life-affirming creation. He was stepping out of their shadows and into the harsh, blinding light of his own solitude. Now free from his idols, Nietzsche could turn his full attention to the fundamental problem he saw in modern culture, the tyranny of morality itself. For centuries, Western civilization had lived under a single value system, one that claimed to be objective, universal, and divinely inspired. In his groundbreaking work on the genealogy of morality, he took a hammer to that entire idea. Morality, he argued, wasn't a timeless truth, but a human invention with a specific psychological origin. He famously laid out two fundamental types of morality: master morality and slave morality, which suffer from the morality. Morality is the morality of the strong, noble individual. The master looks at himself, his power, his creativity, his courage, and calls those things good. Anything weak, timid, or pathetic is by contrast bad. It's a value system that flows from a place of strength. Slave morality, on the other hand, is born from the opposite perspective. It's the invention of the weak, the oppressed, and the resentful. Unable to compete with the masters, the slaves perform a brilliant, insidious act of psychological revenge. They take the master's strengths, their pride, their power, their ambition, and label them evil, and in turn they take their own qualities, humility, pity, patience, and call them good. The driving force behind this is resentment, a poisonous mix of envy and impotence that wants to bring the strong down to the level of the weak. His bombshell conclusion was that Christianity represented the ultimate triumph of slave morality. It had convinced the world that weakness was a virtue and that strength was a sin. This, for Nietzsche, was what we might call the great moral kidnapping of humanity. A system of values born from resentment and a rejection of life's basic instincts had been forced on everyone, smothering individual greatness. It taught people to be ashamed of their own will to power, their natural drive to grow, expand, and exert their strength on the world. This diagnosis is the foundation for his entire project of self-reshaping. If the values we live by aren't divine commands, but human inventions designed to suppress our very nature, then we are not only free to reject them, we have a duty to, if we want to live an authentic life. The declaration, "God is dead," wasn't just about declining religious belief. It was recognizing that the ultimate justification for this slave morality was gone, and in its place, a terrifying but exhilarating void opened up. Into this void, the individual had the opportunity and the burden of becoming a creator of new values, to break free from this moral kidnapping and become the author of your own life. Nietzsche's philosophy offers not a simple formula, but a demanding path. We can see it as a four-step process of radical self-creation. The first step is the most frightening. You have to look inward with brutal honesty. Society, especially one built on slave morality, teaches us to fear and push down what it calls the evil parts of ourselves. Our aggression, our pride, our ambition, our envy. Nietzsche insists, you must do the exact opposite. You must recognize and accept these darker aspects of yourself because they are inseparable from your strength and creativity. He saw the self not as one unified thing, but as a chaotic battlefield of different drives, all fighting for control. To become who you are, you must first become aware of this inner chaos without judging it. This isn't a free pass for cruelty. It's a call for psychological wholeness. To deny your inner demons is to give them power over you in the shadows. To confront them is to start harnessing their energy. As he famously wrote, he who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. That isn't just a warning, it's a description of the process. You have to be willing to face the terrifying depths of your own nature, because only from those depths can true strength emerge. Once you've gazed into the abyss of your own nature, the second step is to accept everything you find there. This is the heart of Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, the love of one's fate. It means saying yes to your life in its entirety, with all its victories and disasters, its virtues and its flaws. You must embrace your individuality, including your weaknesses and darker impulses, not as shameful sins to be eliminated, but as the raw material for your own creative project. Nietzsche offers this incredible idea in The Gay Science. You have to treat your own character as a work of art. He writes that it is a great and rare art where you survey all the strengths and weaknesses of your nature and fit them into an artistic plan, until each appears as art and reason, and even weaknesses delight the eye. The ugly parts you can't remove are hidden, or better yet, reinterpreted into sublimity. Your life isn't something you passively discover. It's something you actively compose. You are the artist, and your character is your canvas. Self-awareness and self-acceptance are internal. The third step is to project this new integrity out into the world. This is the practice of saying no. To refuse moral kidnapping, you must actively set boundaries against the demands and expectations of society, family, and your peers. This is how you break free from the herd. Nietzsche's own life demonstrates this. His break with Wagner, his resignation from his professorship, his retreat into a life of nomadic solitude. These were all powerful acts of saying no. He chose intellectual independence over social comfort. To become your own master, you must stop being a camel, the beast of burden that kneels to take on the heavy weight of others' values. You must become a lion, the sacred symbol of no, a creature that fights for its own freedom and refuses to be commanded. This stage is often confrontational. It means disappointing people. It means being misunderstood. It means standing alone. But for Nietzsche, this solitude isn't a curse. It's the necessary space where your true self can finally grow. The lion can destroy old values, but it can't create new ones. For that, one last transformation is needed. The lion must become a child. The child represents a new beginning, a sacred yes. Free from the baggage of the past and the resentment of the fight, the child is pure creative will. This is the final and highest stage. Here, you channel the fundamental drive of all life, what Nietzsche called the will to power, into creative acts. The will to power is one of his most misunderstood ideas. It's not about the crude desire to dominate other people. It's the internal drive for self-mastery, for growth, for overcoming resistance within yourself, and for expanding your sphere of creativity. It is the feeling of power growing. This final stage, you are no longer just resisting old values. You are actively creating your own. This is the ideal of the Übermensch, or overman. The Übermensch is not a master race, as the Nazis grotesquely twisted it to mean. He is the individual who has overcome the all-too-human state of being a creature of the herd, who has given style to his character, and who lives life as a work of art, taking full responsibility for the meaning of his own existence. Now, we have to correct a common and dangerous caricature of Nietzsche. His philosophy is not a license for cruelty. He would have despised the brutish thuggery of those who later claimed his name. When he talks about power, he is talking first and foremost about power over yourself. The struggle he champions is the internal one, to overcome your own weaknesses, your laziness and your cowardice. His view on kindness is just as subtle. He had nothing but contempt for the pity that comes from weakness. The kindness that is really a disguised wish to see everyone else as miserable as you are. But he had immense respect for the generosity that flows from an overabundance of strength. True kindness for Nietzsche is a gift from the powerful, a sign of spiritual wealth. It's the ability to give without making yourself smaller. His ideal person isn't a heartless monster, but a Dionysian figure who can embrace all of life, its joy and its pain, its light and its darkness, and still say yes to it, still find it beautiful, and still create. The goal is not to become inhuman, but to become a higher, more complete human, one who has the strength to be hard on oneself and generous to others from a place of genuine abundance. This journey of self-overcoming is probably the most difficult task anyone can undertake. It's a path of constant struggle, reflection, and reinvention. It demands courage, honesty, and a willingness to stand completely alone. If this dive into Nietzsche's radical vision for self-transformation sparks something in you, if you feel that desire to question your own script and start becoming your own author, then consider subscribing for more journeys into the heart of philosophy. And in the comments below, share one value that society gave you that you're now starting to question. Because that awareness is always the first step. In his stunningly bold autobiography, Ex Homo, written in the final lucid months before his mind collapsed, Nietzsche gave the book a subtitle, How One Becomes What One Is. This single phrase is the key to his entire philosophy. It's both a command and a process. See, for Nietzsche, your true self isn't some treasure buried deep inside you, waiting to be discovered. It is, as he suggested, something high above you, far beyond what you normally think of as yourself. It's something you have to build. It's something you have to become. Becoming who you are is not a journey of discovery, but a lifelong act of climbing, of creation, of constant self-overcoming. It's about consciously and artfully shaping the chaos of your drives and experiences into a powerful and beautiful whole. It means demolishing the prison of inherited beliefs so you can build a home for your own unique values. Nietzsche's life was a testament to this philosophy. Racked by pain and cut off from the world, he used his suffering not as an excuse to retreat from life, but as a hammer to philosophize with, to break open the hardened assumptions of his time and of his own mind. He leaves us with a profound and unsettling challenge. He asks us to stop being camels, burdened by the weight of tradition. He dares us to become lions, roaring our sacred no to the values that hold us back. And finally, he invites us to become children, joyfully creating our world anew, saying yes to life, all of it. The ultimate question he poses isn't for philosophers in ivory towers, but for each of us in the solitude of our own hearts. Do you have the courage to stop performing and to start creating? Do you have the will to become who you are? You know that feeling. Your stomach just drops when someone asks for a favor you know you can't handle, but you hear yourself saying yes anyway. A wave of instant regret hits, followed by this quiet, simmering resentment that just eats away at your peace for days. You're not weak for feeling this, and you are definitely not alone. This is the people pleaser's trap, a pattern where you constantly say yes to others, even when it hurts you, leaving you resentful and completely exhausted. It's the too nice dilemma. You agree to that last-minute project, and your own deadlines go up in flames. You say yes to a social event you're dreading, and your energy just craters. After a while, it starts to feel like you're just a supporting character in everyone else's story, and you've lost the plot of your own. People-pleasing isn't just about being kind. It's a deep-seated pattern of avoiding conflict at all costs, constantly chasing approval and ignoring your own needs just to make other people feel comfortable. The psychology behind it tricks you into believing that this constant self-sacrifice is the glue holding your relationships together. But here's the honest truth. It's a quiet betrayal of yourself, where your well-being gets traded for a little bit of validation. This isn't some personality flaw. For a lot of us, it was a survival strategy we learned a long time ago. But that strategy isn't working for you anymore. And today, we're going to break that pattern down. We're going to walk through some powerful, real-world exercises that will help you finally break free, get your power back, and find your peace of mind. So let's get real for a minute. Why is saying no so incredibly hard, even when every fiber of your being is screaming it? For most of us, this pattern is a deeply ingrained coping mechanism, often built in response to our earliest experiences. Maybe you grew up where being good, quiet, or helpful was the easiest way to get love or just keep the peace. Or maybe society just kept patting you on the back for being so agreeable, conditioning you to think that running yourself into the ground for others is a virtue. This creates the perfect opening for what psychotherapist Susan Forward famously called emotional blackmail. It's a subtle but powerful form of manipulation where someone close to you uses your own emotions against you to get what they want. This operates inside a thick, disorienting emotional fog. And FOG is an acronym that stands for fear, obligation, and guilt. Let's break that down. First up, there's fear. This is the fear of being rejected, of starting a conflict, of being abandoned. The person doing the blackmailing, often without even realizing it, learns what triggers your anxiety and uses it. They might hint that if you don't do what they want, they'll be angry, disappointed, or maybe even pull away their affection. It's that nagging fear that setting one boundary will suddenly make you seem difficult or selfish. Next, obligation. This one plays on our natural sense of duty and loyalty. It's that little voice in your head that says, "A good daughter would do this," or "After everything I've done for you, you owe me." Emotional blackmailers are masters at making you feel responsible for their happiness, twisting their wants into your duties. And finally, the heaviest hitter, guilt. This is the feeling that you've done something terribly wrong just by putting your own needs first. A blackmailer might use blame to make you believe you're the cause of their pain. You feel guilty for saying no, for letting someone down, for not being the endlessly giving person they expect you to be. But here's a critical distinction you have to remember. Feeling guilty does not mean you are guilty. Often, the guilt you feel after setting a boundary isn't a sign you did something wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. When you live in this fog for too long, the consequences are devastating. It's not just about being tired. It's a chronic state of anxiety and burnout. It's a slow chipping away of your self-trust. Because how can you rely on yourself when you constantly abandon your own needs? The resentment builds up, poisoning the very relationships you are trying so hard to protect. You start to lose your own identity because you've spent so much time and energy trying to be who everyone else wants. You've forgotten who you actually are. That isn't living, it's performing. And the ticket price for that performance is your own life. So where do we even begin to untangle this lifelong pattern? Before we get to the how-to, we have to start with a radical shift in how you see things. It starts in your head. For years, you've probably lived by an unwritten rule. To be a good person, I must always put others' needs before my own. We need to drag that rule out into the light, look at it, and call it what it is: a lie. It's a belief that mixes up self-sacrifice with love and kindness with having no boundaries. True kindness is not about setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Healthy relationships aren't built on one person constantly erasing themselves. The first step in this mindset shift is to really embrace this truth. Self-care is not selfish, it's essential. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you a person who respects themselves. Boundaries are not walls you build to push people away. They are the bridges you build to healthier, more honest relationships. Most importantly, the one with yourself. They are the invisible lines that protect your time, your energy, and your well-being. To really anchor this new mindset, let's use something called power statements. Think of them as personal mantras to shut down that old damaging script in your head, especially when you feel that guilt creeping in. Try saying these out loud. My needs matter. I can be kind to others and to myself. I am not responsible for how other people feel. Saying no is an act of self-respect. I'm allowed to protect my peace. Write these down. Stick them on your mirror, your monitor, anywhere you'll see them. When you feel that pressure to say yes, when the guilt starts bubbling up, repeat them. This isn't just talking to yourself. You are actively carving out new mental pathways. You're creating a new inner voice. Finally, a huge part of this shift is self-compassion. You have to forgive yourself for all the years you spent people-pleasing. You weren't doing it because you were weak. You were doing it to feel safe and loved. It was a strategy that helped you survive. Now, with kindness for your past self, you can gently acknowledge that the strategy has expired. It's time for a new one. Be kind to yourself through this. You are unlearning a lifetime of conditioning. It takes time, patience, and a whole lot of compassion. If this is already hitting home and you're feeling that little spark of recognition, that readiness to build a new foundation, I want to invite you to do two quick things. First, hit the like button below. It seems small, but it tells the YouTube algorithm that this is a message people need, and it helps our community grow. Second, if you want to keep going on this journey of reclaiming your power, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. We have so much more to explore together, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Okay, time to get our hands dirty. We've looked at the problem, we've felt the pain of it, and we've started to shift our thinking. Now we go from why to how. I'm going to walk you through 3 practical, powerful exercises you can start using in your life today. These aren't just theories. They're tools for your back pocket in real-world situations. The biggest enemy of a people-pleaser is the automatic yes. It flies out of your mouth before your brain can even catch up. This exercise is designed to break that reflex. The key is to buy yourself time. So, when someone makes a request, your boss, a friend, a family member, your new default response is not yes. It's a polite delay. Practice these phrases. Let me check my calendar and I'll get right back to you. That's an interesting idea. Let me give that some thought. I need to check on a couple of things first. Can I let you know in the morning? This pause is your sacred space. It's where you do a quick cost-benefit analysis. You have to consciously calculate the true cost of saying yes. Ask yourself, what's the real cost to my time? Not just the 1 hour for the task, but the prep time, the travel, the time it takes to recover your focus. What's the real cost to my energy? Will this drain me or fill me up? Do I actually have the emotional and physical gas in the tank for this? What's the real cost to my peace? Am I gonna be stressed and resentful if I agree to this? What's the opportunity cost? By saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? My own project? Rest? Time with my family? And most importantly, what emotion is pushing me to say yes? Is it genuine desire? Or is it fear, obligation, or guilt? Let's use a scenario. A colleague asks you to help with their project last minute, saying the team is counting on you. The old you says, of course. The new you says, let me check my workload and I'll ping you in 15. In those 15 minutes, you run the numbers. Time cost, 3 hours tonight. Energy cost, high. You're already beat. Peace cost, very high. You know you'll be resentful. Opportunity cost, you'll miss your workout and be too tired to read to your kid. The driving emotion? Guilt. Because of that, team is counting on you line. When you see it laid out that clearly, no isn't just an option, it's a necessity. So you've paused, you've done the analysis, and the answer is no. Now what? For many people, this is the terrifying part, finding the words. We're going to arm you with simple, clear, and respectful scripts. The key is to be polite but firm, use I statements, and fight the urge to over-explain or apologize like crazy. Here are some scripts for common traps. For a work request, you have to decline. Like the colleague from before, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm at full capacity with my own deadlines and just can't give it the attention it deserves. For a friend, asking for too much. I'm so sorry you're going through that, and I really want to support you. I'm just not in the right headspace to help the way you need right now, but I'm sending you so much love. Or, to set a time limit. I've only got about 15 minutes before I have to run, but you have my full attention until then. To your family member, laying on the guilt. I know how much our weekend visits mean to you, and I love them too. I unfortunately can't make it this weekend. I'm burnt out and really need some downtime. How about we plan something for next Saturday? Now, what if they push back? This is where you use the broken record technique. You just calmly and kindly repeat your boundary. If they say, but you always come, I'll be so lonely, you don't get sucked into a debate. You calmly repeat, I know it's disappointing, but I really need to rest this weekend. I'm already looking forward to seeing you next Saturday, though. The final step here is crucial. Role play it. It might sound silly, but it works. Practice these lines in the mirror. Say them out loud in the car. The word no is a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. This last exercise is about seeing the big picture. You can't change a pattern you don't see clearly. This journal is your tool for becoming a scientist of your own behavior. Every evening, take 5 minutes and jot down answers to these questions. When did I feel pressured, anxious, or resentful about a request today? What was involved? What did I feel in my body? What was my first automatic thought? What did I actually do? How would my ideal, empowered self have handled it? This is not for beating yourself up. It's a compassionate, curious process of collecting data. Over a few weeks, you will start to see your patterns with crystal clarity. You'll pinpoint your biggest triggers, the people who push your boundaries most, and the specific fears that keep you stuck. This awareness is the foundation that all lasting change is built on. You'll start to catch yourself before you fall into the trap. These exercises are your toolkit for the tough moments, but to make this a permanent change, we need to weave this work into how you live. First, know this is a journey. You will have setbacks. There will be days you fall back into old habits and say yes when you meant no. That's not failure. It's a learning opportunity. Instead of being hard on yourself, get curious. What happened? What can you learn for next time? The goal is progress, not perfection. Second, you have to celebrate your wins. Every single time you use the pause button, every time you deliver a graceful no, every time you honor your own needs, no matter how small, you must acknowledge it. Tell yourself, I'm proud of myself for that. This isn't ego, it's positive reinforcement. You are actively teaching your brain that setting boundaries is a safe and rewarding thing to do. Finally, as you get stronger, it can be really helpful to get a reality check from trusted friends or a therapist to make sure you're on the right track. Sometimes, in an effort to change, we can swing the pendulum too far the other way. A trusted outside view can help you make sure your new boundaries are healthy and reasonable. This journey from being an exhausted people pleaser to an empowered person is about so much more than learning to say no. It's about taking your life back. It's about showing up as your true self. It's about building relationships based on real respect and honesty, starting with the respect and honesty you show yourself. Your kindness was never the problem. The lack of boundaries was. You can learn to recognize that emotional fog of fear, obligation, and guilt when it rolls in, and know you don't have to let it guide you. You can challenge that false belief that your needs always come last, and you have the tools to do it. The pause button, the graceful no, and the awareness journal. Change isn't just possible, it's your right. You're allowed to take up space. Your needs are valid. So now, I have a question for you. What is one small boundary you are going to set for yourself this week? Let me know in the comments below. Reading your commitments is one of my favorite things, and sharing your intention is a powerful way to hold yourself accountable. Your story could be the spark someone else needs today. Thank you for being here and for doing this important work. Now go live your life on your terms.